There it is. The stream is live.
Okay. Wow, technology. Or, I mean, hey, it could also be a user error, but here we are. Well, welcome to the Save Our Sisters Unplugged podcast, the podcast where we empower, inspire, and share stories to remind you that you are never alone in this journey of life. If you haven't already, subscribe to the Save Our Sisters SOS YouTube channel or the podcast platform you are listening to us on. Get subscribed, child, so you never miss a new episode. And when I go live, today's episode is epic. We already started pre-gaming before we went live. So let me introduce my beautiful guest who I've been anticipating having this conversation with. Sandy Schnakenburg is an award-winning memoir author with a fascination for family legacy. Her belief is the basis of keeping a family legacy is to connect generations through storytelling to pass our experiences down the line of time. She left her corporate finance career to fulfill a promise made to her family's housekeeper, Lee, on her deathbed, and she fulfilled that promise by writing the memoir, The Housekeeper's Secret. And we are going to be digging into it. So if you have not read the book, this is going to be a spoiler alert. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you for having me, Norine. I'm really looking forward to this talk.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for your patience. I swear to God.
Okay.
See, I was so anxious to just talk with you. I was just yapping, yapping, yapping. So let's talk about the book, okay?
Got it.
I read the book. I loved everything about it. I had to set my scene up. As I said before, I had to get my tea. I had to get my blanket. I had to get my comfy spot. And I actually put some blues on on the Amazon, not Amazon, on the YouTube, so I can listen to it and have a good background while I was reading this book, right?
I love it.
So tell me, I know the inspiration for the book, and I know a lot of people have their questions about, well, why did Lee choose you to read the book or to write the book?
Yes.
But I think I know the answer to that.
hmm I
From
bet you
reading this book, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
from reading this book cover to cover, I feel like you were Lee's child. You were the one that was most curious about her. You broke the boundaries by asking her questions about herself and her life in subtle ways. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't violate her privacy, but in the most innocent ways that children would approach adults, you actually got some of your questions answered and you took an interest in her and you were
Mm-hmm.
tied to her hip.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We had a lot in common too. Both of us were both fifth children in our family, which was one of the reasons I knew when I eventually found her family that it was her family because there was the woman, a lady, and she had an older sister, Hazel, but she was the fifth child. But I looked at her name on that identity sheet. It wasn't her name and it wasn't her birth date. And it didn't show that she was married because for listeners to know, she came to our
Hmm.
house with a backstory that she had lost her husband and son in an accident. And turns out this is not a part of the secret. It's not a spoiler alert, but that was her fabricated story. And
Yeah.
her name and her birth date she also fabricated. She didn't want to be found and she didn't want to be found out because she had a secret.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to that secret, but first, I want to dig in a little bit about your family dynamic. You definitely have a family dynamic that I can relate to. I also have four sisters, so I know all about
I
how
love it.
that feels growing up in a house with four
Mhm.
sisters. And so you had four sisters and a brother.
That's
What was
right.
it like to be the last of five girls?
Well, it's like having four mothers as, the older sisters, and it still is like that.
Is
Um,
it really?
yeah, it's funny, even though I'm the youngest girl and I've done my personal achievements, I still feel like my sisters, look up to them. They are my, rock stars in many ways. And then of course I had Lee as my second mom, and then my mom. And so I had a lot of older people looking after me. We could say that. But I also was kind of the invisible child at the same time. I was the child
Oh,
that kind of got missed because I was the fifth girl in an era where my dad really wanted a boy. So the day it was like when he came home from the hospital after I was born, he announced that my older sister tells me this years later. He announced, "Well, I have some news that some disappointing news. We didn't get a brother." Like that was the announcement of my birth.
jeez.
Didn't get a brother because everybody wanted a boy because dad wanted a boy. Everybody wanted what dad wanted because he was so strong and powerful. And
Well, tell me what you really think. I can
yeah,
understand your older sister would be ready for a boy. She was probably like,
right.
girl again? Ugh.
It's really fun having sisters. It's like having your own tribe built in, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love a good tribe too. So
Oh,
your
yeah.
dad was definitely a force in your home.
Oh, he definitely was.
Yeah, and that's the part that was triggering. He was really triggering for me because I
Mhm.
when I was reading it, I think I connected because I could understand what you guys were going through growing up because my childhood was a little bit similar.
Okay.
And in the retrospect, my dad ruled with an iron fist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh man, I could really relate to that.
Mhm.
So what kind of an impact did it have on you to really see him treat your mom the way he treated her at such a young age?
Exactly. Well, when things unraveled, which was I was on my teenage years, watching them, fight all the time and just really him treating her with such disrespect. And she was such a respectable lady. She was a beautiful woman, like a Jackie O kind of class, with a little Mother Teresa spirit. I mean, she really
I
was.
got that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
You get
got that from reading it. When the way you described how she would always have her hair done and she would have her dress just so, I could see Jackie O for sure.
she had an elegance that you can't put into words.
Hmm.
And it was and she knew right from wrong. She knew morals. She was very godly. And my dad, and they both, had strong shared values when they got married. But my dad was 19. My mom was a little bit older, a couple of years older than him. And I believe that my dad was too young to have, framed who he was, where women develop earlier and more confident of who they are. And mom came from a
Hmm.
family of 10, and that all older siblings had really
Okay.
solidified who she was, where my dad was the oldest in his family. And he comes from an abusive father, which explains why he was abusive to us. And he
Yeah.
had a very chauvinistic kind of, a mother that was very, she was strong, but she was also beaten down quite a bit and abused. So he left home at 16, dropped out of high school to make a better life basically, and never got educated, but ended up building this big business. And my impression was him was like such a hero and amazing that he was so successful, but the way he treated people, it was such a disappointment because people were everything to me, relationships and how, to be kind and follow the biblical roots of the spirit. And I always thought, this is not right,
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, you definitely had the right feelings about that. And seeing that, it really takes a toll on you because, there are times where you just want to say as a child, oh, shut up.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
No,
shut up.
I had an earlier chapter called Doormat chapter, and also, like, I think it does something to your, self-worth when
Yeah.
you are told that you're not worthy or even shown that you're not worthy because 'cause you're either not a boy or you're not doing, or you're just a woman. You just by being born in that era with the way he wanted a boy so bad, it was just all 5 of us girls, were worked really hard to make something of ourselves, which did pay off, by the way, but it wasn't easy because we had to go against the grain. We had to rewire the words dad told us that we were unworthy, not, smart or not, all these things that were just not, feeding our higher self, our better self.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. He definitely wasn't pouring into you guys at all. He made it seem like you guys were just supposed to be barefoot and pregnant, and that's all you really were gonna amount
Mhm.
to as a grown-up woman.
I
Did
know,
you
and that's
ever judge your mom or view her as weak for walking on eggshells around your dad?
That's such a good question because I talk so highly of her, right? But yes, when I was younger, I was angry at her for allowing him to treat her that way. Like she didn't know,
Yeah.
she didn't have a father. He died when she was 1. So she didn't know
Oh,
how like to be treated, although she had older brothers and sisters, they were all so lovely. But I would say she allowed that and she didn't fight back. So when Lee was in our household, Lee would say, stand your ground, don't let him treat you like that, and don't believe anything he says because it's not true.
yeah.
And these are things that really, her being in our house was just such a gift, because when you have a outsider seeing the dynamic that's happening, we were just basically unraveling and we were believing everything he said, and she's saying, no, he's not telling the truth, you are not stupid, you are not this, that, and then she would really help my mom was just crushed, she's like, what am I doing wrong? But it was nothing she was doing, it was just my
Yeah.
dad being moody and being himself, really.
Yeah. He was definitely cranky. He came in cranky. He went, it's like from dawn to dusk, he was just this cranky guy. Like he just was
Mhm.
always for the next best thing, the bigger, shinier, better, you
Exactly.
know. So he grew up in an era where men were providers, and he definitely did that,
He did
you
that.
know.
He did that in a way by selling the relationship. Like he didn't, it's the, he was so focused on the outside that on the inside, we all wanted affection, acceptance, approval. And we sought that all our life, just some kind of like compliment. And he
Yeah.
didn't offer those things. And that was hard because he didn't value what the human spirit really needs to be whole and loved. What does that mean to be loved by your father? Oh, he'll buy us something. So we can
Yeah.
associate like love with money, which was really fell apart early on when he started pulling away and not paying for college or anything really. He had me go to the
Yeah.
junkyard to pick out my first car.
Oh my God.
Book that part, but that was, I had it towed home and my uncle fixed it up, and it was a cool car, but it didn't have it never had a title, it never had a registration, which is totally illegal. He didn't
Yeah.
care. And here's his daughter driving around in a 1956 car.
Yeah. And that kind of sucked. But on the upside, you had a car and you were independent. So I guess
Exactly.
mindset.
Exactly.
I was really screaming at the book because when he sent you outside with the hedge clippers,
Mhm. Mhm.
I was like, I closed the book. I was like, I'm
Mhm.
done. I need a break right now. This girl is 6 years old.
Mhm.
What in the world are you doing sending her out to prune hedges? And then you stayed out there all day
Mhm.
and
I
you're
know.
like, okay, I'm done. And then instead of him saying, great job, because you're 6,
Mhm.
he's pointing out all the ways that you could have done better
Mhm.
and finish it tomorrow. My
Exactly.
heart just sank for you. I was so pissed.
Yeah. It is an example of how he worked on everything, and it was and that incident, lives with me, it lived with me really strongly in my life, because I was like, I remember being so affected by it, right? Being treated like that and then never being able to please him when I tried so hard, to do everything correctly, and it was so physically over my head to be,
Right.
holding that equipment and working on this incredible property at 6 and for hours at a time without a meal. So it was really, really tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was everybody else doing when you were out here doing these hedges by yourself?
Right. They were all eating dinner. They all went inside after, dinner was called, and everybody was trying to stay out of
Okay.
the
The
trouble,
path?
where, yeah, to stay out of the path and leave her alone, because dad has instructed this. And they were hoping that, everyone was afraid to speak up at the dinner table, because if they
Mm.
spoke up, he would find something that we said, that he'd challenge and then put us on the spot and then argue it until we're wrong.
Oh my
I know.
God.
So you almost don't, you learn kind of not to talk. And it was a horrible, like, stress. But when he stopped coming home for a while, in a way, we had so much fun as a family. My aunt was
Mm-hmm.
there to help, and Lee was there, and we had a lot of laughter. There were moods, as you could see in the book. There were stories of when we were Lee was at the dinner table, and we were all laughing gregariously, and then you can hear the door slam. And those are moments that I clearly remember how the mood would change instantly.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
bet you could really cut that tension with a knife every day. It's
Oh,
like that cloud just always moved right on in and hovered until the next morning at breakfast, and then
yeah.
he would be gone.
What's strange is you start to think about what he would find wrong before he finds it, because you start to think about his mindset was always critical.
Yeah.
So that was instilled in me as a child to always think of all the things I'm doing wrong, because
Yeah.
they're going to be found out or brought up, and that's a horrible mindset to have. I turned it around when I became very aware of that. But a lot of people can't turn that around if they're not aware. It's just one of those
Yeah.
things, gifted with awareness. And but a little therapy helped there too.
Yeah. Well, I love that Lee was always there just reinforcing you guys, was he more harder on you, or did everyone equally get it? I mean,
Well,
your mom, of course, she got most of it because,
mm,
the things that you guys didn't see behind closed doors, you weren't privy to. And so she probably got the blunt of it. But as far
mhm.
as the kids, do you think that you got more of the wrath than your siblings and your little brother?
Oh, my little brother didn't get much, but he also got highly neglected, which was really harmful to him. But I think I
Mm,
got more of the wrath during my teen years, when I wanted to go, well, after my accident, and then when I wanted to go to
mm-hmm.
college, when I were really fully in the middle of the divorce. They kind of used me as the ping pong ball. And
Yeah.
but at the beginning, early, when I was I was born, when they were already married 10 years, and he had already become very wealthy, and we'd already moved into this huge house. So I was not a boy, and that was a disappointment. It was almost like I was a reminder of his failure for not being
Right.
a boy. And so I tried to do everything I could to, get his approval at that point. So that affected me in that way until I got over it. But I think overall, my teenage years after the accident, when he kind of dismissed me after I had all these problems, like I wasn't worthy of going to
Mm-hmm.
college, I wasn't worthy of. It's all I'm going to do is be barefoot and pregnant. I'll just have kids. You don't need an education. I didn't understand that at all, because I was so driven.
Yeah.
It's funny because I look a lot like my mom. My mom's 100 times more beautiful, but I'm a little dumbed down. But I look more like my mom than the rest of the girls, even though all of us have
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of mom. But I am a lot like dad, in not his moody ways or negative ways, but more of his tenacity and perseverance.
Mm,
I persevere on things. I'm very hardworking,
mm-hmm.
and I have a lot of focus in terms of what I really want to do and achieve, and nothing gets in my way when I do that. And I really do
I love
see
it.
that he saw himself in me, and also because I asked a lot of really good questions that put him on the spot. So he used to get really angry with me at a very young
Yeah.
age.
Because I think sometimes they think that when you ask questions, you're challenging them. But
Yes.
sometimes, and I say that from my own personal experience. The
Mhm.
good thing about that dynamic with my dad and I is my dad actually welcomed my questions, and so, but I asked
That's a healthy
every
dad.
question. Yeah, I asked every question, but I want to dial back and talk about the accident.
Okay.
Okay. Are we
Okay.
ready? Are we okay?
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about that day. Walk us through what was going on that day and then the aftermath, because you said you didn't remember
Mm.
being hit at all. You
I
just
did.
remember riding your bike and then waking up.
I remember feeling like it was such a beautiful day out, and I had to ride my bike. It was gorgeous. It was September 12th, and it was just getting into fall a little bit, but cool. And I
Mm-hmm.
just remember feeling so fit, because summer had just been. I'd always been a runner, and feeling really good about myself. I just was going to meet my friend after school. We had made plans on our bikes, and I would basically, when I was going down from Rainbow Road, which is what we lived on, to Cuba, I always stopped there and looked both ways before I crossed on a diagonal to ride facing traffic. I always felt this was before pedestrians had the right of way too.
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt it was safer because on Cuba Road, the cars went, 80 to 100 miles an hour. It was a very
Oh,
fast
wow.
road. And so I just felt comfortable, riding on the road, but toward, so I can see the car coming toward me. And then when
Right.
it come, I'd kind of move to the side, the shoulder, and then go back on the road. So it was really, I felt like I was completely in control of the safety aspect of riding. But on that particular day, I'd look both ways, and that I remember, but I don't really remember much other than the fact that I was there crossing the street on my diagonal and a car hit me on the diagonal. I don't know. I don't remember being hit. I don't remember anything about it. I almost had to be told I was hit. I don't remember um, what had happened after that for a while. Yeah.
Right. And maybe that was for the best too.
Yeah, it was because I do ride bikes today and I love riding. Um, so it's a big part of my life. I've always been a biker, and I think not remembering what happened to me helped me to get back on a bike, and I wanted to get back right away, believe it or not. But I did go through the
Wow.
windshield. Fortunately, the car was going 80 to 100 miles an hour. If it was going 40 or 50, I would have gone under the car and I could be paralyzed or dead. It was just, the fact is, if you go under the car, it's much worse of a situation, permanent. Well, I went over
Yeah.
the car into the windshield. My head broke the windshield, so I had a traumatic brain injury.
Oh my God.
The 19-year-old driver put his brakes on and I flew out, and the glass caught my face. So I basically had reconstructive surgery like 4 or 5 times just to get my eye, this part connected again.
Mm-hmm.
It's from my upper lip to the lower lip. All my lip was totally off. I had to redo my lips, and my glass under my eye, and the whole forehead was ripped off. Somehow the forehead
Oh
hit
my
here.
goodness. I
It was,
I cried when I read that. I was
mhm,
like, "Oh man."
it was, it
How
was,
old were you again?
I was 13.
13. Yeah, that's really rough for 13 because that's an age where girls are really, really all about their appearance.
It's puberty. Yeah. That
Yeah.
really set me back a lot in terms of confidence and, who I really was. It just took me a long time to get. I was just surviving at that point. And
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really aware. And I think what was interesting about Lee is that she picked up more than anybody that I had a brain injury. I had a traumatic brain injury, and she picked it up by I was forgetful. I was out of balance. I always fell.
Yeah.
I had so many, memory issues. It was just like I couldn't remember any of my past birthdays or different things that happened to me or vacations we had. And so it was all a blur. And I had like a huge sense of confusion. Like it was just, everything was like scrambled eggs. I just
Like
couldn't
a
even,
giant brain fog.
yeah, brain fog. I couldn't follow sentences through. Like I'd go like I'd watch everybody at our dinner table talking. I'm like, what are they talking about? And I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want it to feed into my dad's, narrative of, oh, you're stupid, you're not very smart, all these things that he was telling us before the accident, even that
Mm-hmm.
kept our confidence low. But now I thought, oh God, he's right. He's right. I'm this, I'm that. I don't want anybody to know. So I'm going to just fake it till I make it. Just
Right.
nod, say yes, you kind of do it. And I was so ashamed of the fact that I couldn't follow any conversations. But Lee got me reading and helping me with my spelling and work and all these different projects that, particularly cleaning, helped me focus like a kind of like the Karate Kid. It was it was a very focused endeavors, but they're all around cleaning, and she would teach me, and that was just helping me stay on task for longer than a millisecond, really.
Mm-hmm.
And the puzzles that we worked on really helped, and it was so frustrating for me because I was like ADHD, and I just think that she kept saying, you can do this, but she didn't make me do anything. I wanted to be by her because she had this beautiful peace and contentment about her spirit. And I didn't find anybody in our family had that. There was so much chaos and yelling
Yeah.
and screaming all the time.
I was Yep.
Noise
And
is a
I'm
real
so happy that she was there for you because throughout all of that, your mom was so preoccupied with her marriage.
She was very concerned about her marriage, and in fact, she was going to divorce. She was going to file papers the day of my accident, and it just kind of got delayed because I lived. She had made some kind of prayer deal with God, and the whole
Yeah.
thing was just sad. But
Honestly, I didn't agree with that pact that she made with God. I'm like, oh.
you know, who does? I think she was reaching, for desperation for me to live.
Yeah.
And I think she was hoping that if she did not, she felt like divorcing him was going to do something bad, and she didn't want to do something bad. She was just such a good
Yeah.
woman,
And
and
she was
both.
rooted in her faith, it seemed too. So, divorce is very, very sacred. It's not something in my culture, it's not something that we really, it's not an option.
Yeah.
It's not although I am divorced now,
Mhm.
but had I been married way
Yeah.
back before, oh
Yeah.
no, I was gonna be stuck in it. To date, my parents will not accept any new husbands. They believe that's their belief that you get married once, and anyone that you marry after that, if your past spouse is still alive, you're
Hmm.
committing adultery.
Wow, that's a wild thing. Yeah.
And tell me about it.
My mom went to the church to try to get her marriage annulled so that she
Hmm.
could get married. Yeah. And the church will do whatever you do if you donate to the church. I think it'll just I'm not really sure what happened, but she didn't get remarried in the church. She did get remarried years later, though.
So reading later on in the book, you stated that I think when you were talking with I can't remember his name, but it was the guy that actually helped you get the car, that your dad was
Yes.
completely destroyed when you got in that accident. How did it feel for you to hear that?
Oh, you mean to get the motorcycle?
Yes, the motorcycle. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So when I was in college, I was struggling because my dad had stopped paying he decided I wasn't worthy of college, even though I got the straight A's that he promised. So I had to drop out. It was horrible, but I ended up getting 2 jobs. But I had one problem is I didn't have a vehicle. I only had a bike. And the jobs were too far away for a bike. So I found a motorcycle online, and I wanted to buy it. And I'd ridden bikes when I was younger. So I was very familiar with riding motorcycles. And in fact, I loved them. So I found this one. It was $500, and I didn't know what I was going to do or how I was going to get it. And I just kind of, in the back of my mind, I went with my friend while he was getting his haircut. I was strolling into shops, and I strolled into this trophy shop, and I was just looking around, and the guy came out and said hello and all this. But it turns out he had a Chicago accent. He noticed my Chicago accent. And I said, I know he asked me about my, where I'm from. And I said, Barrington. He said, my old boss is from Barrington. And turns out that was my dad, was his old
I was
boss.
like, remove foot from
Oh,
mouth.
exactly. It was just amazing how the coincidence happened. So he took me under his wing, and he's just like, yeah, your dad, he fired me, and for the wrong reasons. He said I stole from him, and I never did. But
Yeah.
listen, I understand what you're going through, because I understand that man is really difficult, and whatever you need, I'll help you. So he goes, I said, I need a loan to buy a motorcycle. He goes, well, I don't know. I don't want to get you a motorcycle if you don't know how to ride. I go, I know how to ride. I'm really good at riding. I just need a vehicle to get this job, to get to my job. So he loaned me the $500, and I paid him off, 100 a month while I was working.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. Like he knew exactly what I was going through. It was just like almost serendipitous that I've walked in this one store, and here this man used to work for my father on the other side.
What were the odds?
We forgot to mention we're in Arizona, which is 2,000 miles away from,
From
Chicago.
Chicago. Yeah. So I want to read this because this took me out. And I'm going back a little bit to when your dad didn't want to pay for your college education, which I
Mhm.
was like, oh God, come on, seriously?
Yeah.
I'm like, you paid for everyone else.
Mhm.
Why are you using this against me? Why am I being thrown in the mix? This is what I'm thinking if it was me, you know? But I'm
Mhm.
like, why are you throwing Sandy under the bus about all of this? Like, just pay for her schooling. She's a good girl. She's the last girl that you have until Rob comes along and he wants to go to college. You know, I just really hated what he was doing to your mom and using you as the pawn,
Mm,
to just piss her off, so to speak. And
yeah.
boy, listen, I was like, look, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read it. I got the book right here. Put my spectacles on.
Mhm.
Look, now they want to give me problems because this was so pivotal for me. He said, "You're not going to college. It's a waste of time and money." And then I'm gonna skip everything else. And then you said, I'm gonna read it in my voice the way I would say it to my dad. Oh, I'm going to college. He said, "Oh, I'm going to college. I'm going to get an education and build a career for myself. And if I find the right person, maybe I'll get married and have a family. But it won't be because I have to depend on a man to support me." I was like, "Say it, girl." I mean, I was like, "Yes, Sandy, yes." You
Mhm.
tell him. Good for you.
Yeah, what he thought I was gonna be just mom because I look like mom. He wanted me to be mom, and I didn't want, um I love my mom. I actually wanna be more like my mom. I mean, but at that moment, my mom appeared like she was not respected because the way he treated her, and she allowed it. But she came out of it with flying colors, and she was by far the stronger one in the relationship,
Yeah.
survived it all.
Perspective.
Mhm.
As you grow older, you understand when women endure, it
Yeah,
doesn't make them weak as you think. It makes them
exactly.
strong because they can endure.
Turns out my dad was the weak one at the end of
Oh,
his
for
life.
sure.
He got taken, and he truly was the weak one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think you had a little hook spine. Yeah. I was like, go ahead, look at this girl telling her dad off. And I'm glad that your dad wasn't abusive to you guys because that statement could have caused a world of problems.
Yeah. Well, he couldn't because Lee was there. Again, the housekeeper was always in the room. And when you
Yeah.
have a third party that doesn't that can witness everything, she could have just her presence could have saved us from more
Yeah.
damage.
I was thinking that too. I was
Mhm.
definitely thinking that too. But
Mhm.
as a young girl growing up, and when your dad is saying all these things and Lee is present in the room, sometimes did you want to just wait for Lee to say, "You can't talk to her like that"?
Yeah, we wanted Lee to do that, but Lee she finally, after years of it, she finally would speak up, and he would fire her, but mom would just hire her back.
Yeah. I
So
thought that part was really funny. He was like, "Okay, we're gonna play this game because we know that we're not really fired. Your ego is a little bruised. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give this 24 hours, and then we're gonna go ahead and get your breakfast started in the morning, and we're gonna act like this didn't happen today."
that's right, that's right. But she became bigger than that, and she never worried about yesterday or tomorrow. Lee was one that lived for the moment and was always standing up for principle and what was right and moral to do. She was
Hmm.
such an ethical person, and she knew what was wrong, what was happening to us was wrong, but she could only say so much because, again, she was working for the family, but she was really the family because
Yeah.
she
She
lived
was
her
the
life.
glue. It was an invisible glue, but she
Yeah,
was the glue, because she uplifted everyone.
she did. She brought our
She
whole house
uplifted
under,
everyone.
another spirit higher, like another frequency higher. She just kept us all, in laughter and joy, especially during her Chicago Cubs games.
I love that. I really love that.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I really liked about Lee was how she took care of you after that accident too.
Mhm.
And then your mom, I mean, everybody was just, your mom with that vitamin E oil. I was like, when I read that, I was like, oh, mom was up on game. She knew about that vitamin E oil.
Yeah, yeah.
That took scar because that's what they use in the what you call it, cocoa butter oil that I use for
Yes.
my face. See, my face is flawless. That's a very good beauty regimen. Very good. And
Mhm.
Vaseline too. That's a good
Yep,
one.
yep,
If
all
you're
that.
looking for a tip.
She was always like, "You're so beautiful." I'd look in the mirror and I'd be like, "Really, mom?" I mean, she goes, "Oh, beauty's on the inside." And I would say, and then she used to say things like, I wasn't a very pretty teenager either. She goes, but you'll blossom when you get older, because I did. And
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting because I did blossom a little bit later. Like I'm not as bad as I used to look when I was going through the healing process. In fact, my daughter found my pictures when she was like 5. She went through my drawers and she was finding that. She goes, "Who's this person? They look horrible." I go, "That was me."
Oh,
Oh, honey, that was after an accident. Don't worry.
yeah. Oh,
Oh
but you
no.
know what? I love that your mom and Lee kind of tag team with you kids. You
Yeah, they
know, when your mom wasn't able to stand up, Lee was right there. What did
yeah.
you think about their sisterhood?
Oh, it was a true sisterhood, a friendship of two people, unlikely from opposite sides of the, lifestyles and world, but they came together with soul, heart and soul, with God in the center of it, with their same value systems, same goals to raise this family and help, each other get through each day. My mom
Mm-hmm.
helped Lee helped mom. We helped Lee. I always said my job was I worked for Lee,
Yeah.
because I never even thought about, like, it's all I wanted to do is be around her. So I always wanted to help her. I mean, that's how much I loved being around her. It's just to spend my days doing chores, which is much better than doing chores for dad. As you can know, that was a lot worse.
Yeah. It'll start off like it's a good thing and then it just turn into something. I loved how when your dad asked you for that wrench and you went out, you were really curious and you went out when he was fixing that car and
Mhm.
he asked you for the wrench and you're like, "What's that?"
Oh,
And instead of him using that as a teaching moment, he used it as a moment to put you down again. You don't know what you don't know.
you don't know what you don't
Y-
know if you're not taught. He never taught us anything other.
Yeah.
He always expected us to be born with knowledge. And one time I remember saying that to him, you just expect us to know things that you know without knowing. And my mom used to say that too. She goes, "How am I supposed to know this happened today if you didn't tell me?" Or something like that.
Yeah. He was really, how do you say it? What do you call it when people are just on a whim? You know,
He
he
was
was
really,
like real flighty, like when it came to your travel plans,
yeah, really unpredictable, really spontaneous, very,
spontaneous.
yeah, yeah.
I
And
didn't like that,
hazard.
you guys had 30 minutes to pack for that Puerto Rico trip.
Oh no, that was
And
with
then
Orlando, Florida. Yeah.
the Florida, I'm sorry.
Puerto Rico was mom. That was like for sure. Uh-huh.
The Puerto Rico trip stands out because is that when the Cayman showed up?
That's, yeah. See, when the alligators,
Yes.
the crocodiles showed up. Yeah. They showed up in the mail and Lee got the mail in the
I
box.
was like, you guys are gonna traumatize Lee because now every time you guys went on vacation, she's like, listen,
I know
I'm
that was
holding you responsible to make sure nothing live comes back here.
she was definitely worried about that after that incident, because she's like, I don't want to be at home in this big house with these, crocodiles.
Yeah. What did you find the third one? Did you ever find it?
Never did. No,
Wow. It's
never
probably
did.
dead somewhere.
Yeah,
Maybe after the house was sold, they probably found it somewhere.
I don't know, but the house is no longer. So it's probably buried in wherever the house went.
Yeah. And one thing that I really liked about Lee as well was when you guys got a little bit older and some of you got into drugs and yourself, you got into bulimia.
Mhm.
You know, tell us what you can about that.
Well, it was such a secret and it was so private. Nobody ever knew. And had to stem from after my accident. And it was like the only thing I could control. Um, and I guess also I didn't feel beautiful, but I thought, well, I don't know how it really came about, but I realized later it is unhealthy. It's an addiction and that it's hard to remove it without getting help. So anybody out there that is struggling with that, you have to get help. It's like alcoholism or
Uh-huh.
drug addiction. You need to realize you're not in control, that you have a higher power, you have the 12-step program. These are things that actually do work when you submit. And I actually turned myself in to get help without my parents knowing. I like went MIA for a while and then they found out and they all came and actually they were really proud of me. I never had a problem after that. I actually probably was a blessing in disguise, because when you learn about how an addiction can take you over, you actually mature in ways that you can't even describe. Like the awareness level was like, I matured like 10 years, and I understood so much more about my childhood, my life, the habits, and why it came, why I chose to leave. You have to choose also to get better. A lot of people are brought in under like an intervention and they resist.
Right.
And these things don't work. They're repetitive interventions, they're repetitive, cycles. They have to one day just wake up and say, I choose a better life, or I choose
Yeah.
a life, that works like in a healthy way. So I like sharing it only to help other people that are struggling. There are a lot of people out there struggle with that. So I found out later, even today's day, and it's absolutely, I think you can overcome it, because I did, and I never had a problem again,
Oh, good.
ever,
Good.
ever, after getting help. And I think that if people think they can just stop something, they can't. They need to get the help and understand the underlying cause and the emotional need to control something, or have addiction, and then have that heal or removed, or whatever, how they do it, whatever their cause is. And then it really does become a whole, like you're free from all addiction then. And it's so liberating, and it's so beautiful, and it also opens up your world in such a way, because you've put God first, and you've
Yeah.
been able to overcome something big that makes you a stronger person at the end.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
I applaud you for getting through it. And just for context, for those that may not know what bulimia is, can you just walk us through a little bit of what that is?
Well, there's two forms. One is just overeating, that is called bulimia too, and one is overeating and purging. So if one gets overeats and purges, and thinks, oh, this is a way to eat whatever I want and not get the calories, then they would just continually purge, and it becomes like a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it's very similar to anorexia, who that really doesn't eat it all. They just starve themselves. So in a
Right.
way, bulimia is also starving yourself if you're purging, because you're not getting the
The
right
nutrients. Yeah.
nutrients anyway. We all know Karen Carpenter is a famous lady that is this lovely singer, and she died of anorexia. And in her day, these things weren't really known, and the cures weren't really out there. Anorexia is a lot harder to cure from, because people are, their mind is told not to eat at all, and they can't
Mm-hmm.
go back into eating. Where in bulimia, you're always eating, or you're eating whatever you want to eat. You just have to, you just get, you deal with the underlying issues of it when you're in, like getting care and getting medical help. But if it's a cycle where you're purging, you probably don't stop until you have a commitment to stop it. Otherwise, it could kill you. It is
Absolutely.
very, very dangerous. It's very dangerous for
Absolutely.
a lot of women and
Well,
men.
I'm so glad that you made it through with the therapy, and you are a testament that people can overcome these things. And so I'm glad that you would be able to inspire other women that they can also overcome it as well. So I want to switch gears a little bit, because I want to talk about Lee's life.
Mhm.
Now that Lee has passed and the secret is about to be revealed, and you started getting this information
Mhm.
on, you know, on Lee's life. I researched all the folks that you put in that book. I was reading the book and I would put it down and I would Google on my phone and I would look at all the people, and even that tour that you went on.
Mhm. And the Melrose Plantation.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
I thought that was very interesting that you even found all that information that was
Mhm.
there.
Or
You
the I
know, I
used
was like, wow.
Antino State Hospital, or Melrose. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Melrose had so much information on the Matuire family. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
How do you pronounce her last name?
Well, Matoyer, we always pronounce it
Matoya.
Matoyer, but her family pronounces it Matuire, but it doesn't
Oh, it's
sound like,
French?
yes, it's French.
French Creole.
It's
Okay.
French African American. So Coin, who is her ancestor in the book, is African American, and she gets together with Pierre Matuire. That's what they call him and they have 10 children, but she had already had 7 children with another slave. Coin was the concubine for Pierre Matoyer back in
Mm-hmm.
the 1700s. So it's very interesting ancestral, and she just survived the unthinkable as well. So in Lee's lineage, she had some strength in her family, and she had survivors, fighters and amazing people. Like they were all, and even in the Cane River area of Louisiana, there was like priests and high-ranking people of that town were all her
Mm-hmm.
family.
Oh,
Like
wow.
the priests, the people who had headed all these, the whole area, and then they have a museum now, of course, on her family. So Melrose
Well, my
Plantation.
mother-in-law lives in Louisiana, so now you've really inspired me to actually go in and look this up.
Yeah, you should go. It's
I
amazing.
love history. I love history. I love culture. But I always love that family dynamic of when people are looking for their heritage and their ancestral, information, and
Yeah,
then you find out all these different things because I was doing that myself and I had involved my dad in it. And when I find things out and I would tell him, he was so excited about it. He'd be like, "Oh yeah."
yeah,
He was like all about it. It was like this thing, of course, this guy was in his 70s at the time. And so getting involved in something that involved, his family lineage was really, entertaining and, important for him.
yeah.
So I love, well, first of all, your friend Vicky is the GOAT. I mean,
How about that?
she
The
she
CIA?
is the greatest of all time. Did you ever find out what she did for a living?
No, she told me not to tell. She wouldn't tell me how she found out, the information. I had a feeling like either her husband or her had some access, you know,
Mm,
special research access, or she knew what she was doing and she knew just how to find things. She
yeah,
just
I mean,
really have zoned in on this, and she got really into it and kind of went down that whole rabbit trail, and to the point of she could write a book about the Matoyer family, right?
oh wow,
Yeah, she started going off into all the legs of it, but we never did find, a couple of Lee's, children. Yeah.
children, yeah.
Mm.
And that was unfortunate. But I guess going into it, you were going into it with like, well, I may or may not succeed in this. So I kind of like how you actually mentally prepared yourself. But I don't think you were prepared to have that conversation with Miss Ida.
Oh no, that was shock. It took me years to get over that. I couldn't even write Lee's,
Really?
because when my family and I were all in shock. I mean, imagine the lady who raised us and had lived with us for 30 years, and we thought we knew everything about her. We knew nothing. And all of a sudden, she has this entire different past and identity, and she appeared to be hiding out, like, and not wanting to be found on our property. I mean, really, she was working for our family, but there were people looking for her. And they
Yeah.
all stuck at the maid agency, where there was a note there that said, closed file, cannot, she works there, she's with a family on the north side and it cannot be revealed. So
Wow.
imagine that if they didn't have a closed locked file, that she could have, they could have
Been
not.
reunited with her children.
Yeah, yeah.
At least her son that was looking for her.
Oh, I know. But what would have happened then? Then the lie would have been exposed. And then
Maybe it happened the way it was supposed to happen.
the way it was supposed to happen is just the way. And I always tell people, I don't think my mom didn't know about Lee's true past either. And she didn't, I believe that was a prayer of Lee's, because somehow I did not even think about writing this book until after my mom died and we found Lee's ashes in my mom's closet.
Yeah.
It was the inciting incident that triggered me to go on the research and find out, oh, let's put her ashes with her husband and son that died, right? That's the logical thing to do, is unite her with her deceased family together, and it's just felt right. But
It sounded like a good plan until you found out that there was no husband and there was definitely a child, but he was alive and well
yeah,
and not
exactly.
living too far away.
And
And when
more
I
than,
read about Lee's attack in Grand Park, it just broke my heart.
Mhm. This
You
is
know, when she
a spoiler alert for the listeners, but it is something that happened to Lee was so tragic and horrendous that it's incomprehensible how she actually survived, and not only survived but thrived and became the person she was in our family. That's the question of the day, is like, how does somebody do that and then become such a hero in another family and just be
divine intervention.
mhm,
I
yeah,
always believe that God protects you from something so you can help somebody else through it. Because
exactly.
she had um that attack,
Mhm.
and then it really, her life just changed. She
Oh
ended
yeah.
up in the hospital for a while, and then that's how she got pregnant with those children. Yeah, listen, did they ever really truly investigate everything that went on at that Mantino hospital?
Oh, you can go online and read about things. It's horrendous, the things they did there. They
I
were
did read some of it. I read
Mhm.
some of it, and if it was not winter here and 14 degrees, I would have road tripped, because
It's a good road
I'm so happy that I live in the state. I'm really happy that I actually live in a state, because it's so many things connected me to this story.
Oh, I love it.
And the first thing was that I lived in a state. And a little fun fact that I wanted to mention, Brickhouse, the announcer, he was actually born in Peoria, and that's where I live.
Oh, really? How
I
about
know.
that's awesome.
I know. I thought that was just a little fun fact. But she loved her cubs, and I just love that she gave you guys everything that she didn't have and everything that she couldn't give her own children.
Yes, exactly. Like she wanted to have the opportunity to raise children, and my mom needed help because she
Yeah,
was
mom
so
needed help. Yeah.
she needed a lot of help. She was overwhelmed. She had a huge house and my a narcissistic husband that treated her and beat her down, and she couldn't take care of everything. And the kids, we were just we needed somebody to handle and keep the order and keep while my mom, and it turned out that mom's talents like cooking and Lee liked cleaning, she
Mm-hmm.
liked doing the wash and Lee liked the ironing. It just kind of matched,
It
like
matched. It
mhm,
matched perfectly. They were the perfect team.
they were. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. And then when it came time to teach us chores, mom was like, you work for Lee and help her. I'm like, yes, that'd be awesome. So we helped her do
Yeah.
this. And as she got older, which she did, things got harder. We were hanging out windows, cleaning them, and we were doing all the hard stuff. And that was part of the game. As long as she was there watching us and we were safe, we were doing all the work.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
when you put that iron on your face, I was like, what is she doing? I thought Lee was about to lose her mind.
She did. She was so mad at me.
Yeah, that was not safe. But I want to
Mhm.
jump back to Mantino, because when you visited that,
Mhm.
all the little hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I was like, oh my God, are you really going there? So now I'm inspired to go, but
Yeah,
I'm going to take my husband. You went by yourself.
yeah. Well, yeah. There's buildings there that are still abandoned and still have that equipment in it, and it's just spooky. There's other buildings that have, companies have moved in, but they have stories,
I'm
stories in those
sure it's
buildings.
haunted.
It's still kind of ghostly. I mean, there's ghosts in all the buildings. I mean, there's just a lot of people died from these tuberculosis
Yeah.
and, typhoid, just a lot of diseases that got in the water and everyone got sick. And I don't know how Lee avoided it, but she did. And somehow, miraculously,
She
she
had
survived
purpose.
it.
She had purpose, and I feel like God just carried her through. He just
Yeah,
covered her because she was supposed to die in that attack. But
I know.
because it was so cold, she was preserved.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. She was sitting there naked in the snow all night long after being gang raped. Is horrible. But even in Mantino, like the people like Jenny Polinsky, I think I remember talking about her in the book because she was kind of like Lee's same age, and she was a patient there. Her parents put her in
Hmm.
there. She was rebellious. She probably had like a bipolar issue or something. At those days, your husband can commit the wife, your parents could commit the kids. It was just crazy. But she went in there and she was rebellious. She was in, I think, her second year at University of Illinois, and she majored in chemistry. And
She
she
was
never,
super smart.
super smart lady, and they didn't treat her well, and they ended up doing an experimental lobotomy on her. And it could have been Lee. They could have said, hey, let's take this person instead of that person.
Yeah, it
you
was
know
really a gamble because back then I think they didn't know what they were doing, so everyone was a science project at that point.
exactly.
But I liked the conversation that you had with the young man that actually worked at the facility. You
Yeah,
really pushed the envelope with those questions, but he just sat there and answered them like he was really waiting for someone to actually ask him about it.
yeah, he wanted to talk about it. He really
Yeah,
did. And he wanted to talk about it in a way that this was his life, and it was all the way it happened. He was told to do this, and he was told to do that, and he did his job. And he was a good employee. He worked for 30 years there. And yet they didn't know that, X-ray machines cause deformities in babies. They didn't know, you
yeah.
know, that different things happen. I mean, he was a good man. He has a nice family. And I appreciated him giving me time. He was so excited about the book. And unfortunately, he passed before the book got published.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
he was
terrible.
really excited. He wanted to do with the mayor. The mayor of the town was really close to him. In fact, the mayor's son introduced me to him, and he wanted to do a tour, create a tour in Manteno, like a ghost tour. Well, like
Mm-hmm.
something that can kind of like, you know, basically, promote the story, but also like give teenagers something to do. Go on this
Mm-hmm.
tour of this incredible place that has so much history,
Right.
and yet connected to a story in the book, because it was all like about that, like it talked about the history of it. So that anyway, he died before the book came out, but and the mayor, I think he's moved out, or well, he's no longer the mayor that was the mayor then. But I interviewed him in 2017, so it wasn't that long ago. But he did,
Yeah.
I think Dick died in like 21 or 22. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really loved that conversation and he was so candid and you know, although he felt bad now, but he was just like, listen, we just didn't know,
Yeah, they did.
and that was just the honest truth. They just didn't
Mhm.
know. You don't know until you know.
That's
So I
right.
want to switch to when you found Lee's children. You
Mm,
know, after you found him, did you ever think back to when she mentioned the book and if someone had really took it seriously? That first of all, this is a two-part thing. First of all, do you think that when she mentioned she wanted you to write a book, or well, yeah, wanted you to write the book, do you think that that was her way of trying to talk about her life? Like maybe if someone had engaged in a conversation and said, "Yeah, what is it going to be about?" and then she would have started sharing about her life.
well, I don't think she would have shared when my mom was alive. I don't
Mm,
think she wanted my mom to
okay.
know. So I think she left me with that agency or the assignment of the story. And this story, just for listeners, she used to say all the time, like, I'm going to write a book one day and nobody will ever believe it. And we would kid around with her, like, come on, Lee, is this a threat or a promise? What is this book anyway? And she's like, well, I have so many stories. And I'm like, well, what are the stories? And she's like, well, you'll see when I write my book. And then, of course, at her deathbed, she asked
Yeah.
me to write her book. And I said, Lee, I've asked you all my life questions about this and that and family and this and that. And I got in trouble for it. And I never got any answers. And she goes, you'll figure it out. She knew computers were coming on and we were able to research things. This is
Yeah.
1994 when she dies. So, computers came, I would say my 1986, 1987, it was just like the first Apple, was coming
Yeah.
out. Like this maybe more of the Microsoft first
Mm-hmm.
computer. And it was like, there eventually would going to be some kind of data bank that was going to come up. And so somehow she figured it out, maybe that it would be told. And she said, well, she goes, "It just, I said I'd write it when the time is right." That was my answer. I'll write it when the time is right. Like what
Yeah.
is the right time? And the time I did wait. I waited till it was the right time. It just came to me, right?
Yeah.
It was just meant to be. And I think this is the story she really wanted the world to know
I
about.
think she would have definitely been proud of this book
Yeah,
and the
she's,
way you wrote it.
yeah.
Yeah, because you had to really talk about how she really interacted with your family, and
Hmm.
you had to talk about everything in sequence. So
Yeah.
even though there are some reviews that were, going against the grain on how you really, structured the book, I think it flowed beautifully,
Oh yeah,
because
had a editor that was obsessed with structure, and we worked on structure so long. I was getting tired of it, but I actually, the best structure of all was the way it all happened, because
yeah,
do a flashbacks, because then you're going to give it away before you even get there, right? You can't do
exactly.
and yet you have to walk through the reader through the story like I lived it. I have to be through my childhood
Exactly.
was when she arrived, and then me unveiling the story. How did I go about that? Where did I begin? And where were all the hurdles I had to go through, and how many times I quit, because it was so,
Yeah.
I was banging my head against the wall, like what is going on here? Why doesn't she even exist? Where's
Yeah.
me? And
So so walk us through the anxiety that you might have had when you set up the meeting to meet Lee's children for the first time.
oh, that was so incredible. Well, just on the phone, you could see the kindness and the excitement, right? When he was like, well, he was just so willing, to know about his mother and know us.
Mm-hmm.
So we set up the date, and the drive down there was long and tense, because we were like, wow, this is not only, I think there were like 9 murders in not far from that area that weekend. My aunt called, said, turn around. I said, no, 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 no. This is Lee's family. We're fine. We're fine. And they were fine. They lived in a great place, beautiful house. And we got there, and they were waiting out in the front porch, all of them. And they greeted us with open arms, and they couldn't believe. And of course I had the bag with Lee's ashes in it,
Yeah.
It was just like a moment. It was such a moment. And we're like, what do we do? And then he took the bag and he put it on the TV. I go, she's going to be really happy there. She loved watching TV.
Yeah. And turn the Cubs game on.
It was almost like her spirit was in the room, because we talked about a lot of things about her, and the kids had so much in common of her likes and dislikes and habits. And there was just such a warmth and communal feeling, like they were family. And I remember, like, we talked about, like, we are like the song "We Are Family."
Yeah.
We were actually singing that together before we
We
left.
are family.
Like, I got raised by your mother, and it was like, here we are, and they wanted to know everything about her. So we made them these books, these memory books, and every
I thought
picture
that was so
of her.
awesome.
It was really beautiful, like the memories they have of her now,
Yeah.
and and also, Philip, who was Pierre in the book, his real name is Philip. And anyway, he has, 4 children and a bunch of grandchildren, and I met them in another event for his surprise party birthday that we went
Mm-hmm.
to. And his grandchildren all wanted to know everything about their grandmother, and it was just
Oh,
really beautiful that
wow.
I got to be the messenger for them and the picture giver and all this. It's
That
just
was
touching.
awesome.
What, like, these are her grandchildren. Like, how cool is that? Like, she was a part of all of our grandchildren. I mean, not mine, because I got pregnant the year after she died, but um it was more of all the other grandchildren that we had already. I think it was 9 when she died, and they were all hers. They were all her grandchildren
Mm-hmm.
in our family, but these were her
Her
blood.
legacy.
Yeah, it was
That
really
was
cool.
amazing. I was so excited. I felt like I was in the car with you and your sisters while you guys were driving up for that meeting. It's like I always immerse myself in the book. So that's why I had to really set up the scene to read this book, because I'm an empty nester. So my husband was, putting in a bathroom. And so I just had the whole day for myself. And I was just so immersed with everything. I felt like I was actually there. So you really told it very well. And all the details that you put in there was just amazing. Just the way you even described your mom,
Mhm.
I felt like I could have, like, she was just this amazing mom, but she just was in a bad situation. And the way you described Lee, and then when you saw Lee's daughter, there was a spitting image of her. That
Yes.
must have been really weird.
That was very weird. Yeah, and she's a beautiful lady. I just love her, and she would look so much like Lee. Yeah, and she was so smart, and she loved to travel too. And, she was a school teacher, and then she retired, and she did well for herself, never married or had kids, but she traveled with lots of friends, and she had, like, sisters that were not blood, but
Mm-hmm.
they were, like, she grew up with, and she thought they were her sisters. Um, and they're just all really close. So she has, she's created a good life, and that was the life that Lee didn't want to disrupt. So
Yeah.
I think part of Lee's choice of not going back to them and not seeing them as adults was to give them grace to be who they are, whoever they are, with whoever
Yeah.
they were with. Because I think at the time Lee was free to see them, they were teenagers. And that would have been very disruptive as a teenager to find out that your mom's not your mom and this other lady's your
Yeah.
mom, who's in a mental, institution. All
That's a
these things.
lot.
It's a lot. It's very heavy. It may have really messed him up. So she was very selfless, that Lee was, and she wanted to do what was best for the kids,
Yeah.
not what was best for her. Like, oh, I want to
Right.
see kids for me. It was really selfless what she did, and yet she made good about it because she ended up getting her own family anyway with
That
us.
was a sacrifice that she made for her children. Do you still keep up with Pierre and Angel and Serenity?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, we just kind of
Really?
call or text, but not a lot. Just definitely Christmas cards. Definitely every Christmas, every holiday, Pierre calls. He's faithful to every one of my siblings.
Oh,
He's like
wow.
the
That's
leader, the oldest
amazing.
in the family, and he really feels connected to us. Especially
Mm-hmm.
because we were the ones looking at we thought was his picture on Lee's mirror all those
Yeah,
years.
he was like, that's not me. My eyes were never crossed.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, really? Oh my gosh. Yeah. So it was
Did you ever find Tony and Joey?
never found him. No. We're hoping maybe the book they come out of the woodwork. Who knows?
And they might see it or read it.
It'd probably be a long shot unless it can get in their lap somehow through another Matoyer or a way. I mean, I could do more research and just send it coldly to the people that have that name, because they couldn't legally be adopted and change their
Mm.
name because Lee was in an institution. So none of them were legally adopted.
Okay.
So they all have the Matoyer name.
Okay, so that's good because then they would appear on the family tree.
Yeah, they would, but we can't find them.
Mm,
It's not that easy. It was somehow or another, who knows? We don't even know if
yeah.
it lasted or whatever, or maybe they did end up changing their name and, and just called something else, or I don't even know how they did it. Yeah.
Now, here's the question of the century, and this has been a burning question for me since I'd read about it.
Mhm.
Um, in looking for Lee's children and meeting the siblings and and all that, because now you guys are all siblings now in spirit.
Yeah. Right.
Did it inspire you to have a relationship with your half brother? Did you guys have that with him, or was he just really cut off from the family due to
Oh,
circumstance?
no, no, he's a part of our family. No, he came to my daughter's wedding. He's
Okay.
he's definitely my brother. We accept him wholeheartedly. He's a child of God, just like my mom said, and he's a great guy. Yeah, we have no problem with him at all.
Oh, good. What about the mother? Was that ever a problem?
Well, we never really knew her. I've never really seen her. Um,
Okay.
the mother of her she's, I don't know who she is really. I mean, it's his mother, and he still keeps in
Yeah.
touch with her, and he tells us about conversations and stuff. But he, he's just accepted like another sibling to us. So, and he's he's endured many of my father's abuses, just like we have. But we
Right.
have collectively, endured it. That he has by himself,
By himself. Yeah.
which has been a lot harder in many respects. I do feel for him.
Well, at
Yeah,
least now he has you guys to embrace him, and I'm so glad that it worked out where you guys didn't ostracize him due to circumstances. I think that it's really great because the children are innocent.
oh, he's totally innocent. But my mom didn't want him to be known while we were growing up at the young age that we found out about him, because it was just a reminder of her shame of what happened, her naivety, of how she didn't know her husband was having an affair. So you can understand that is that it didn't have anything to do with her immediate family. She didn't say anything like, no, you can't talk to him. She never put any boundaries around it, but we
Mm-hmm.
had respect for her
Yeah,
dignity,
yeah.
and we just never, I mean, we were young teenagers. We weren't going to reach out to people, until it was time. And then we started, as we became in our 20s and 30s, he was at all the, after my parents were divorced, Richie was at all the events, the family events when we were with our dad.
Wonderful. And
Yeah.
it seems that Lee knew everything that was going on. I mean, she knew how to take care of you after your accident. She knew how to take care
Yeah.
of your mom, what your mom needed to uplift and pour into her. She knew when you had your bulimia,
Hmm.
all
She
the
did.
things that your siblings were doing. She knew all about that. You
She even
know,
knew my dad was having an affair. Like
she
my
knew
mom.
your dad was having that affair, and she was like, listen, he's always gone, sis. He's always gone. I need you to really just focus on this.
But she didn't want to be the one to break the news to my mom, right? Especially
Yeah.
facts. But my mom found out, the way she found out, which was pretty shocking.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, that's
But
definitely a lot. A lot of women found out that way.
yeah, they
Women
did.
would call the house and you'd pick up and you're like, "Who's this chick?" And
Yeah.
so I just love Lee. I love it. But the moment that you made it right with Lee,
Hmm.
with Mr. Ernie Banks.
Oh, isn't that awesome? The
Oh my God. And
height
the
of,
whole time I'm reading it, I'm like, oh God, I hope he calls her. I hope he calls her. Like I'm holding my breath and I'm like going through this book like, oh my God, let me scan down here and skim through here and I'll go back and read it. But I need to know if he made this call.
and her response was so cute. She's like, "I can die now. I've talked to Ernie." Like
Yeah.
like
She's
I've
like, I've
lived.
done everything in my life. Now I'm
Yeah,
ready.
exactly. She was so done and so, ready for anything to happen at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved it. And I love that experience and I love that she had that moment. Um, so I know that the Cubs finally won the
Finally.
World Series. Were you able to spread her ashes on Wrigley Field?
You believe it or not, we still have the ashes. Well, of course, after they won, we had to go back and we met with Philip and had dinner. And of course, he passes across the table half of them. He's like, "Do we have to be so obvious that Lee's across the table?" And then he's like, these are for Wrigley. And I'm like, okay, we'll do it. Well, what we need to do is set a date. So we're working on that now, even though it's not really kosher to do. It's actually
Yeah.
illegal. So it would only have to be, yeah. Here we are public on this podcast, but that's why we're hesitant, even if it's a little bit of it. We have to honor what she wanted to get her there, and we don't know when we're going to do it, but we'll do it all together for sure.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I
we
love
wanted
it.
to do it after the book came out. So the book just came out in December, so it's only been 3 months, and right now will be not even 3 months yet, actually. March 4th will be 3 months, March 3rd. And so we'll have to figure it out next summer when it's spring training or when we get to Wrigley and do a tour.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, you can, I guess if you wanting to, maybe you can do it on the river too. I mean, it's close,
Yeah, exactly.
but
There you
it has to be
go.
Wrigley. Maybe something, it has to be because, her soul will not rest unless she's there.
Exactly. She really wanted to be a part of that baseball stadium forever. She was
I
just
love that she just kept score. I mean, you found all those books after the fact, and she was really into it. She had a radio with it, and I love that she introduced all of her hobbies to you guys. The
Mhm.
puzzles. I love puzzles. I have a puzzle here. It's a 500 piece that I'm ready to start, but I'm trying to figure out what part of my table I'm going to do it on. And so
Yeah,
when you said you had to go to the garage to go and find like a hard surface so that the dog wouldn't
yeah,
uproot it again, I was like, oh, I'm with them on that because I'm thinking I need something mobile because it's not going to be safe here on the dining room table because we eat here and, that's where the mail goes. And it's just such a public
I
place.
get
So I
it.
wanted where I can just put the puzzle piece. And so I loved it. I loved the book. I love
So
how you wrote it. I loved how you just made us feel like we were a part of it.
thank
I
you.
was very immersed. I was very immersed.
Thank you so much. I love that you were. And that was my goal, is to put the reader in the situation. And I do just want to give you a little side note on the puzzle, is that on Amazon you can buy a puzzle board and you can put it moves around. You could put it in another part of the house, and
Oh,
it's and the pieces stay there because it's on like a felt thing, and you can put
okay.
pieces in the drawers. And we have it in our house, and we're always having a puzzle. We're always doing it together as a family. We always have something going, and we just move it aside, and it just disappears when we're having dinner or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm definitely gonna get on Amazon because, that's my spot.
Yeah, it's the best thing. I really love it. But thank you. I'm so happy you experienced the book like I wanted people to experience it. And I've also had been so honored by people that have just found me through my website, which is
Hmm.
Super here, and it's basically have emailed me or sent an email through Squarespace, which is my website designer, and it would come and they would just be like, "I just ran across your book at the library or here or there, and it's this story grabbed me like no other. I've never wrote any author in my life, but I have to write you because I can't get it out of my head." And
That's
it's
amazing.
really truly honored that people see this story as an adventure for their soul as well.
Yes, I loved it. I loved it. So as we close, you went through a lot in your life, just as much. Well, yeah. I mean, you had a lot of trauma. Lee had some trauma. I mean, I don't think trauma didn't touch anyone. Everyone had trauma.
I think if you
But the
really
book is about resilience and sisterhood. So I really loved how you tied everything in.
awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
It
So
really did tie in.
yeah. So as we close, what advice would you give women that might still be struggling with bulimia?
Ah, I would say, look for places that offer help, and go and talk to somebody on the phone about it, what they can do.
Hmm.
If they're scared about insurance or scared about how they would pay or anything like that, don't be, because your health is more important than any of that. And also your life is more valuable. And once you overcome these hurdles in life that keep us from living our best self, you will find a whole new level of living and a whole new life. And I think that, everyone deserves that, in a way that we all, addiction is unhealthy for the mind, body, and soul. It keeps us in a cage. So I just hope, they would reach out to any organization that would have, an eating disorder clinic or any kind of addiction clinic that could help them.
I agree. I love that. So, do you have any book signings or movie deals coming up?
Well, I hope a movie deal. I really see it as a movie, to be quite honest. And so does a lot of readers. I'm getting that a lot. Like, oh, I
I
see.
can see it. I can definitely see it.
Yeah, there's a lot of creative liberties in this story, things that you can't, like when you're telling a true story, I have to stick to the truth on all of it, where a
Hmm.
filmmaker can fill in the blanks on all these different scenes that I've created as real and are real. They can fill in the blanks and make it a real good film. And so that would be awesome. But I do have signings. I've been doing a lot of signings in Park City, Utah, which is where I live part-time. And I have book events that I'm doing. Like people would, they have like 100 people would come to a restaurant or a home, and they'd have a book event where I'd give a slideshow and a talk and then do a signing. And
Okay.
that's been really fun.
Okay. And so I've put up your social media handles here so they can get to your website and they
Okay.
can purchase the book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Hmm.
Can they purchase it from your website as well?
They can. It'll take them there to those sites. It's actually available where all books are sold. It's distributed by Simon and Schuster, which is a main publisher. And so really any kind of book outlet like Target, anything that has books, it will be available.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, great. Well, Sandy, this was such an amazing conversation. Like, I really loved the book. I mean, I can't even say it enough. I already put it out on my social medias that, hey, if you haven't read this book, you need to get with it. You know, I was so excited. I was like, I'm gonna be interviewing the author on Wednesday, so tune in and listen.
Thank
But
you.
I just loved everything about it, and I'm going to go ahead and put a prayer point on for that book to become a movie because I think it would be amazing. I mean, there's so many different things that people can learn from. I mean, we're talking sisterhood, we're talking resilience, we're talking divorce. You know, we're talking red flags. You know, sometimes your mom may not have been privy to it because she was a little sheltered, grew up a little bit sheltered, and that's okay because some red flags aren't red; they're pink, and we don't think that it's a big deal until later on. And
Mhm.
so, we're talking even brotherhood, we're talking lineage. The movie would be amazing because it would just touch so many different areas, history, ancestry, all of it. I love it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I won the awards that I won because of the broad amount of issues in the book and the depth of the emotion in the book. And there was like 30 judges in one of the awards, and it was just really an honor that people saw that depth and the width of the whole story as a whole, how many
Hmm.
issues are addressed. And time is a big deal in the book because it starts like in 1965 when she arrived at our house. She dies in 1994, and I discover, like, I go to Mantino in 2017 and tour that. So it is a broad range of time, but a lot happens in that time, which
Yeah,
mhm,
that would definitely a lot happened.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sandy. I really love this discussion, and I really love that you were a little nervous about how people were going to perceive this book, but you have nothing to worry about.
Well,
And all the awards that you've won for this were definitely well deserved.
thank you so much, Norina. Thanks for having me on your podcast. This has been awesome.
You're welcome. And to all those that were able to tune in, thank you so much for tuning in with us. If you have questions, I will get them to Miss Sandy for you. I don't see anyone with any questions on LinkedIn or on YouTube. So, thanks you all for tuning in. And Miss Sandy, we will definitely talk soon.
Thank you. Can't wait.
You're
All right.
welcome.
Take care.
Peace and blessings.
You too.